Welcome to Uberdoozer. We're going with part 2 of decorative doors, and they're simple doors, just with scrap wood. These are this is okay. Swinging door to its finish, or its installation at least. And getting the hinges scribed in the right position. Basically speaking, for the newbie, you lay the hinges out on the door, and then lay the hinges out on the jamb with an 1/8 or 3/16 greater dimension. That gives you the gap at the top. So now just routing out the mortise for this. Now we're going to do the same thing on the jamb, and you can't see it, but that extra few sixteenths is included. So you won't see it. You might notice that I spread my hands out in a "what happened" gesture. I didn't have a good view of my router, which is a bad practice. And I went too far. I gave myself extra mortise that I didn't want. But I just mentioned it to say that this is another great thing when you're using scrap wood, or MDF in this case. There it is. The ability to fill and paint is just great. Mistakes do happen if you're going to use clear, stained, finished wood. Then you don't have those options, but it's definitely avoidable. Fixing your mistakes is one of the best marks of a good carpenter, in that situation where they have to be invisible mistakes. Anyway, enough about mistakes. This is all external MDF. I don't know if it's called MDF or HDF or exterior, but it's a high density. It's much heavier even than MDF, which is heavy, and it weathers extremely well. So I came by some of that, and it's proved to be very good building material for me. And I wouldn't hesitate to use it for exterior trim, exterior, feature elements. It machines well, it routes well, so yeah, it's good stuff. All the different leaves of the opposite leaves of the hinges get attached, and then hanging the doors is a simple matter of placing the pins back in. Here we are. You get used to how you can move it around and get things to line up. And a few taps on the hinges with a hammer is okay, as long as you don't dislodge the screws and weaken them. It's really pretty straightforward. You can see in the distance, or in the background, that this whole thing is framed with heavy gauge metal. It looks like, well, the idea was for it to look like an old-fashioned sort of little cottage back there, but it's anything but old-fashioned. From its inception, it's a modern material. So the MDF too is a modern material. So now fitting. And I'm going to use this 4.5-inch grinder with a sanding disc on it, and I have to say that that's a really useful tool. It's very aggressive. You have to be careful with it, but so many things. Just quick stripping of old varnish or paint, as you saw with constructing the door. But here I am fitting. the door, and it makes quick work of it. It's nice. Far cry from getting out the plane and having to take the door off and plane it. Oh yeah, now you see the back of the door, that it is just the same rough plywood that it was from the beginning. It's got some more screw holes in it that fasten the finished parts onto it. But and this is a shed, so I won't be doing much with that back side of the door, if anything. Yeah, that's good. Pretty good fit. So the hinge side must have been bound a little bit. That means that the door and the jamb were touching before it was fully closed, and you want to clear that away because it has a spring effect that it springs. It wants to spring open. And that's just no need to have an extra stress on the fastenings. And there's the hinge side gap, and it's pretty uniform. I know I had about the same thing on the latch side. Here we had the hole that needed re-drilling, so that got plugged and re-drilled. And now the latch plate goes in. Nice commercial grade latch plate. Because I wanted to fit the door and completely, I have the doorstop molding, which is that just beyond the hole where the door hits, and because of that, I'm using the old-fashioned, time-tested hammer and chisel method of mortising that latch plate. Carpenter's been doing this for since there have been wooden door jambs anyway. It's not always faster to set up a router. If you're adept at this method, this traditional method, it really can compete with the speed of the router when you figure in the setup time and adjusting any guide bars that you might be using. So now it's time to paint. This is the sliding door thing. I had the mustard color paint for the surface of the door, and then the little squares in the weave, I mixed some black with that mustard and made a kind of an olive green. Now what I'm mixing here is something between the two, and I'm going to use it to just hit all the joints everywhere in the door, and that I'm going to wipe most of it off. The idea is to have a kind of a popping effect on the 3D augmenting effect on the weave pattern, but then on all the joints and all the dowel plugs that are in there. Just gives it a nice homey, older, historic kind of effect, maybe, that it shows its 3D quality. And we're not trying to hide the joinery, we're trying to bring it to the forefront, make it feature it as which in effect gives it the kind of a historic look, like an old door that's been through weathering and stuff like that, it shows its joints a lot more. Its joinery, its construction a lot more with that aging, and this paint is designed to mimic that a little bit. It's takes some time to wipe away the right amount and leave it looking nice, but it's very cheap to do, and it's effective. I just put that water-based polyurethane on, 3 coats. Now measuring where I want the door to fall in the closed position, and how I want to place the rollers on top of the door to maximize the length of the rail up top, the guide rail, and make it move the way I want it to move. Oh, so I pick up this drill bit to start putting the hardware on, and you see me pushing the whole door I'm pushing the door rather than drilling. And so it's a tragic situation if I didn't have another bit or the ability to sharpen it in the field. And that's something you don't really want to do, but as long as you can do it, that's just another area where you can have confidence and the ability to go on without stopping. And now you see this is drilling through maple, very easy. So it was an effective sharpening, and I can go on. I don't have to go to the hardware store to get another bit. I don't have to search high and low, which in my life I never find anything easily. Now we're going to put the hardware on. And liking and subscribing is always a good thing for everybody. And I'm doing black on the hardware. At least, yeah. Now it comes time to hang that door. And I'm not going to do it alone. Yeah, I'm taking off the end stop. And speaking of stops, I'm going to be able to do put a heavy screw through that rail anywhere I want the rollers to stop. So I'm doing that. I'll be doing that at the right side end of it as well. So it doesn't have to bang into that manufactured stop alone. I'm going to call on my wife and daughter to help me. And what follows is kind of a fast motion Keystone Cop sort of version of hanging a door. And you know what? We had a hard time hanging this door. This is not the first one I've done, but this was the trickiest to get in place. And I think it was probably the angles that we established between the three of us and such. But I enjoy watching it, watching my girls. They're the only ones with me now. My boys are all married and starting families of their own, and now my girls are my pride and joy. And they're fun, as you can see. So you see, it's not a matter of the ability to lift it, it's the ability to hold those rollers in place and everything else at the same time. And that's why help is useful. See, I can get that in there, but I wouldn't be able to get the second one in and hold the weight of the door by myself. Part of the reason I personally like this clip is because my girls don't know I'm filming this, and so they're just being themselves, helpful and fun at the same time. And my wife just noticed that the camera's there, so now the secret's out. And there we are. We're in place. Now I'll show you the finished door and shed and give you some information on that. So there's the brickwork that you haven't seen yet, but if you stay tuned, you will see it. And so here's the door. This is the sliding door, and you see that there's sort of a 2x6 casing around the outside, and this big block with the hasp is basically the stop, the only stop. And down here we have something you might not see. It's typically used on like refrigeration coolers and stuff. Now I made these for a struggling company that I was working for. I made half a dozen of these roller stops, the whole set, and they sold 5, and I had this one left over. I painted it hammered bronze, I guess it is. And you see what it is a little wheel in there, and the thing is houses that wheel and that strap of steel. 2 different types here. So those roller guides do the job of stabilizing the door. See, now look, when we're in the open position, you know, it hangs and it bangs back and forth. So when you close it and those engage, no more shaky.